Hello students, today I am going to discuss chapter 2, the Vedic period. The scholars and historians, they refer to the period when the Aryans first settled in India as early Vedic period, that is 1500 to 1000 BC. Between 1000 BC to 500 BC, when iron had come to be used, it is believed that the Aryans they followed the course of the river and settled along the valley of Yamuna and the Ganga. Later, when the iron tools had helped them to clear the forest, they moved in eastward and southeast directions. Aryans, so far nomadic in nature, gradually now settled in the Gangetic Valley, and this period is known as Later Vedic Age, 1000 BC to 500 BC. The culture of the period is referred to as the Vedic culture because it is based on Vedic texts. Sources. The literary and the archaeological sources for the reconstruction of the history of the Vedic age are as follows. Literary source. The Vedic literature is divided into following categories: the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharveda, and their Samhitas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. The Vedas. The Rig Veda is the oldest religious text in the world and therefore is known as the first testament of mankind. It is divided into 10 mandalas. It is said to have composed during the early Vedic period. The hymns are dedicated by the sages to God. They were passed on orally from teachers to their disciples. The Samaveda. The Sama means sweet song or the melody. In this Veda, some of the hymns are borrowed from Rig Veda, and the hymns were meant to be sung at the time of sacrifice by the priest. The Yajurveda. It deals with the hymns recited during the performance of yajna. The hymns in this Veda throw light on the social and the religious life of the Aryans. Atharveda. The hymns contained in this Veda deal with the magic and the charm. Other than the Vedas, the other literary traditions of the period included: they are the Samhitas. The hymns, the spells, and the prayers of the Vedas are collected in their Samhitas. The Brahmanas, they are mostly written in prose form, and the Brahmanas explain the social importance and the religious significance of the rituals and sacrifice. The Aranyakas, they are known as the forest books, written for their guidance of the hermits and the students living in the forest. The Upanishads, they are philosophical commentaries on the Vedas, and the doctrines such as karma, moksha, and maya are explained in detail. The allied Vedic literature, the Vedangas, they deal with the ways in which the Vedas ought to be chanted. The Sutras, they are divided into 3 groups. Sruta Sutras, which deals with yajna and sacrifices. Griha Sutras, which deals with ceremonies connected with family life. Dharma Sutras, which provides rules of conduct for various classes of people and various stages in their life. Upavedas, as the name suggests, these are subsidiary Vedas. They are 4 in number. Ayurveda deals with Indian system of medicine. Dhanurveda describes the art of warfare. Gandharva Veda describes the art of music. And Shilpa Veda deals with the art and architecture. Darshanas, Darshanas are the schools of philosophy that is based on Vedas. Dharma Shastras, the law books called the Dharma Sutras, and the Smritis together with their commentaries are called Dharma Shastras. They lay down the duties for the different classes of people as well as for the kings and their officials. The epics. There are two primary epics in India, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The Ramayana is an ancient Sanskrit epic. It was written by sage Valmiki. The epic narrates the story of Rama's quest to rescue his wife Sita from the clutches of Lanka's king Ravan. Mahabharata is believed to be the work of sage Vyas. It narrates the story of the two sets of paternal cousins, the 5 sons of deceased King Pandu, the Pandavas, and 100 sons of the blind King Dhritarashtra, the Kauravas. They became bitter rivals and opposed each other in the war for possession of the ancestral Bharat kingdom with its capital Hastinapur. The Bhagavad Gita, which forms a part of Mahabharata, is one of the most sacred religious texts for millions of Hindus in India and all over the world. The epics serve as a main source of information on the political institutions and the social and the cultural organization of the epic age. They provide information on the various Aryan kingdoms. They are the finest literary works of ancient India, and Bhagavad Gita, which stresses on the philosophy of karma. It talks about indestructibility and immortality of the soul. It teaches that how a spiritual seeker should act according to dharma without being attached to the fruits or consequences. Now, the archaeological sources. The archaeological sources of this period includes iron implements and the tools and the remains of pottery. The discovery of iron marks an important stage in the march of civilization in the world. Iron was a harder metal than copper, so it was very cheap and available in plenty. Iron deposits were found over large area and it was used in agriculture. Thus, the discovery of iron gave the Aryans the new implements like axes to clear the forest and to cultivate the land. With the use of iron plowheads, sickles, they could bring the vast tracts of land under cultivation. The use of iron gave rise to new trades by providing durable implements like saw, chisel, hammers, nails, and tongs. Thus, this gave rise to occupation such as weaving, spinning, carpentry, tanning, and tool making. The iron was also extensively used in making weapons like swords, armors, and shields. The pottery. The evidences of colorful artistic pottery with the set patterns were discovered in the areas between Ganga and Yamuna rivers. These are called painted grey ware. They are fine grey pottery painted with geometric patterns in black. Society. In the Rig Vedic time or early Vedic period, the Aryans they lived in villages. The family was the fundamental unit of the society. The oldest male member of the family was its head. He was called Grihapati or Kulapati. Several families they lived in a gram or a village. Several villages they formed a visha, and many vishas formed a jana. The head of the village was called Gramini. The head of the Visha is known as Vishapati. Rajan or the king was the head of Jana. The king governed with the help of ministers. The important officers included the Gramini, the Purohita, and the Senani. The Senani was the commander of the army, and the Purohita performed the religious ceremonies. The administration of the village was carried out by Gramini. In the early Vedic period, the three popular assemblies were known as Sabha, the Samiti, and the Vidata, which advised the king. The women participated in the deliberations of the assembly. The Samiti was the assembly of people, and Sabha was the council of elders. The Sabha performed advisory and judicial functions, whereas the Samiti was called to session on special occasions. In the later Vedic period, the kingship became hereditary, and the divine elements came to be associated with the king. And this period marked the beginning of a taxation system and administrative machinery. During the later Vedic age, the popular assemblies they lost their earlier importance. The Sabha and Samiti came to be dominated by the chiefs and rich nobles. Women were no longer permitted to attend these assemblies. The position of the woman. In the early Vedic period, women had the right to education and enjoyed equal opportunities as men for their spiritual and intellectual development. Women attended popular assemblies and they took part in religious rites. The practices of the child marriage and sati were absent. Widows could marry again and women could choose their husband. But in the later Vedic age, there was decline in the status of the woman. They did not enjoy the right to property, and the rules of marriage underwent a drastic change. The freedom enjoyed by the women of choosing their husband was curbed. Widow remarriage was no more favored. Caste divisions. In the early Vedic period, the society was divided into classes based on profession. There are four varnas or orders of society: the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. The people who preached spiritual teachings to the society and lived spiritual lives were called Brahmins. The Kshatriyas were the people who protected the society against external attacks and maintained the internal law. The Vaishyas were the business class, traders, and the farmers. The Shudras, they were the people who engaged in serving the upper class, and the professions like carpenters, blacksmith, goldsmith, cobblers fell under this category. During the later Vedic period, these professions became hereditary and it resulted in the emergence of the caste system, which by this time had become extremely rigid. A superior position enjoyed by Brahmins, Kshatriyas. The position of the Shudras became very pathetic and they were deprived of the rights of performing sacrifices and learning the religious texts. The four ashramas. In the early Vedic period, man grew up according to the family tradition. But in the later Vedic period, the whole lifespan of an Aryan came to be divided into four periods. And the four stages, they are known as the four ashrams, each of 25 years of duration. And the four ashramas are Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. The Brahmacharya ashram lasted up to the age of 25 years. During this period, the student was expected to acquire knowledge in the Gurukul and observed strict discipline. During the period of Grihastha Ashrama, man was supposed to raise a family. As a householder, he was to take the responsibility of maintaining his family, and the period lasted from the age 25 to 50 years. The third stage was the Vanaprastha Ashrama. It lasted from the age 50 to 75 years, and during this period, man was expected to retire from the worldly life and acquire spiritual and philosophical knowledge. The last stage, lasting from the age 75 to 100 years, was the Sannyas Ashram, and this was the period when man had to leave everything forever and go into meditation in order to attain moksha or salvation. Education was imparted in the Gurukul. The residence of the Guru is called Gurukul, meaning the family of the Guru, had become the most sacred institution. The Gurukuls are located in the outskirts of the city in the forest. The student lived there, and the Guru treated his students like his own children. The student is required to do all the household work for his teacher. He had to get up early in the morning, take a bath, and chant the Vedic mantras. Most of the teaching was done orally. At the completion of the education, a student used to give Guru Dakshina, a gift, to his teacher. The Gurus were greatly respected and revered. The most important objective of the education is to bring about physical, mental, spiritual development of the students. The subjects studied included Vedas, Puranas, grammar, mathematics, logic, ethics, and military science. Food, dress, and amusement. In the early Vedic period, both men and women, they wore upper and lower garments made of wool and cotton. They wore clothes that were heavy but simple in design. Men wore turbans. Ornaments were made of gold, silver, and ivory, used by both men and women. Barley, milk, and products like curd, ghee, vegetable, fruits were the main food. Chariot racing, horse racing, playing dice, music, and dance were the favorite pastimes of the people. In the later Vedic period, there are evidences which included the production and consumption of rice by the people. The religious life. In the early Vedic period, the Aryans worshipped the various aspects and forces of nature. They realized that human welfare depended on the power of nature. The Aryans considered the different forces of nature as the manifestation of the Supreme Being who created the universe. They worshipped the following deities: Prithvi, the mother god; Indra, or the god of rain and thunder; Vayu, or the god of wind; Agni, or the god of fire; Usha, or the goddess of dawn; Surya, or the sun god; Varuna, or the sky god. The most important among these gods were Indra, the rain god. About 250 hymns in Rig Veda are devoted to him. Agni was the second important god and was regarded as an intermediary between God and the human beings. Varuna was the third important one, who was the god of water, cloud, oceans, and rivers. Thus, all these gods of the Rig Vedic age represented the various forces of nature. At the same time, they believed in the existence of one supreme power as the creator of the universe. There was no image worship during the Rig Vedic period. The Aryans worshipped their gods with humble offerings of milk, grain, and ghee. They prayed to get happiness and material prosperity. In the later Vedic period, The two outstanding Rig-Vedic gods, Indra and Agni, lost their importance, and Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva gained prominence. Simple nature worship lost appeal, and rituals and sacrifices became important. Prajapati, or the Brahma, the creator, came to occupy the supreme position. Vishnu came to be conceived as the preserver and the protector of the people. Rudra or Shiva was regarded as the destroyer of the universe. In addition, some symbolic objects began to be worshipped too, and some important female deities during the later Vedic age were Usha, the goddess of dawn, Aditi, the mother of gods, Prithvi, the earth goddess, Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. Prayers continued to be recited but ceased to be the dominant mode of worship. Sacrifices became more important. Simple religious practices of early Vedic period became complicated and ritualistic. The priests who conducted the sacrifices were rewarded generously through donations or dakshinas, receiving gifts like gold, cows, and clothes. The concept of rebirth, karma, dharma, moksha gained roots, and naturally the position of the Brahmins improved considerably. Economy. In the early Vedic period, economy was predominantly pastoral. Agriculture was important, and there are references in Rig Veda to the leveling of land, seed processing, and storage of grains in large jars. Barter system prevailed, and the possession of cattle was synonymous to wealth. Apart from barley, no other grains are mentioned. There are references to fire being used for burning the forest cover and the practice of shifting cultivation. Major changes in economy took place during the later Vedic phase. Importance of agriculture grew during this phase. The growth of agriculture in the later Vedic period was made possible by the availability of vast tracts of fertile alluvial lands of Ganga Yamuna Doab and the middle Ganga valley. Both the archaeological and the literary sources they depict the introduction of rice as the staple diet of the people. Towards the end of the period, iron plowshares and metal tools were used and a variety of crops were cultivated. The craftsmen mentioned in the Vedic texts include leather workers, wheelwrights, blacksmith, and potters and carpenters. None of these groups were considered as of low status. Weaving seemed to have been a domestic craft. Wool obtained from sheep was the most common raw material. Cotton is not mentioned. Trade. During the later Vedic phase, agricultural surplus led to trade, giving rise to markets, from which developed towns and cities. Barter system was still dominant in trade with the other countries. Beside agriculture and trade, other important occupations include domestication of animals, crafts in various metals, carpentry, pottery, and fishery. Women were engaged in spinning, weaving, knitting, and dyeing, and